Welcome to Skholar IAS Current Affairs classes. We have brought you some of the important articles of the day. Let's see one by one. So first article is on trans fat. So trans fat is nothing but unsaturated fat which has some negative impact on your health. So this is related to your GS3 Science and Tech paper. And now let's try to understand what is in the article. By January 2022, India will be joining a group of countries in limiting industrial trans fat. So, this is what is important. India is trying to limit the industrial trans fat, and this limit would be set around 2% of the mass of total fat present in the product. So, when we say product, it is nothing but food products that are being sold. And this is not the first time that this limit has been set. Even previously, limits has been set by the government as well as other authorities. In 2016, actually, the trans fat content limit was halved from 10% to 5%. And even recently, in December 2020, the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, FFSSI, has capped it to 3% that needs to be achieved by 2021. So this is broadly about the developments about setting a limit for trans fat in food items. But why is this industrial trans fat is being focused? See, the trans fat is naturally present in red meat and dairy products. It's already there. This unsaturated fat is already present in red meat and dairy products. So the focus is basically on the industrial products that add trans fat just for the sake of increasing the shelf life of the products at less cost. So this is why the trans fat is added. If it is naturally present, it won't have much of a health impact like what it happens in case of industrially produced trans fat. And that is why government actually notified about this application of edible oils, fats and emulsions like maragrains. So this is why the industrial trans fat is being targeted as of now. So by setting limits to this trans fat, industrially produced trans fat, the trans fat content in food items would be drastically reduced, almost to 2% in all food items. And they are trying to target the ingredients associated with the industrial trans fat. It's so because many ingredients are used to produce this industrial trans fat, so the government is going to target the ingredients associated with it, the production and usage of such ingredients. But despite doing all this thing, how is this going to help us? How is this limiting of industrial trans fat is going to actually help the consumers? See, normally, even if the oil is less than 2% of trans fat, if any oil that you take, any fat item that you take, if it has less than 2% of fats, this content can be increased if it is regularly heated. So this is why, if you observe, in many cases we are asked not to consume food from the roadside stall. This is because of this thing, because they might be reusing the same oil again and again, and the trans fat content in that particular food item, because of regular heating of the oil, repeated heating of the oil, increases. So reducing the trans fat will eventually reduce the level of bad cholesterol. This is what the important reason of asking not to use trans fat at all. This bad cholesterol actually has an impact on the health, and this also reduces, by reducing this bad cholesterol, by reducing the trans fat in food items, the risk of cardiovascular diseases would be brought down. Is it substantially proved or not? There is an example for that, because Denmark has been the first country in setting limits to trans fat, and it has set it to 2%. So 3 years after setting a limit of 2%, actually the death due to cardiovascular diseases drastically reduced. So this is a positive outcome because of limiting the trans fat and industrially produced trans fat in the food items. Though the government comes up with these limitations, whose responsibility will it be in when it comes to cutting down of trans fat in food items? See, broadly saying, there are two important stakeholders involved in this process. One is the producers of food items, and second one is the consumer, that is us. So in this case, the producers have to take up the initiative, because it's they who are going to use this industrial trans fat in their food items. And completely eliminating the trans fat without compromising the food taste or cost is going to be a challenge for them. But many major multinational companies have already resolved to eliminate the trans fat itself by 2023. It's going to be a challenge, but they have resolved. So many companies, even at domestic level, many companies have to come up with this practice, and they should be adopting such resolutions so that the cap, either they follow the 2% cap that will be set by the government, or else they should adopt self-restriction in using such industrial trans fat items. So students, this is about the trans fat article. It's also important for you to know that this can be a question can be asked on this trans fat and even in prelims because of the nature of this article itself, because it has multiple aspects to it and which can be framed as a prelims question and asked in UPSC prelims 2021. So try to remember all the points that have been listed here. Okay, let's move on to the next article. The second article is on dams and disasters. So basically this article is dealing with mains GS3 disaster management section. Okay, and this is related to the recent glacial melt that happened, which led to the floods due to induced by this glacial melt, led to the destruction of damage of two hydropower projects. One is Rishiganga hydropower project and next is Tapovan hydropower project. In both these projects are in Uttarakhand, and these got damaged during this flash floods. And this issue actually raises concerns about two things. One is the safety of the dams itself. Also, the damage due to the damage to the dams would also lead to worsening of the disaster, because when the ability of the dams get affected, it also leads to floods. Now let's try to understand how this whole flood situation, how dams play an important role. We will see one by one here. First, let's try to understand the impact of infrastructure projects itself on the flood situation. See, infrastructure projects in hilly areas actually results in deforestation. It's an obvious one, because only when deforestation happens, infrastructure can be developed. And when that happens, the ability to hold soil reduces. And also the construction materials of this infrastructure project gets dumped in river fronts. So in addition to this, the use of explosives to break the rocks or whatever it is used for the construction purpose, it also destabilizes the land in that area. So these are basically making these sensitive regions more prone to flood. And in addition to this, actually, following this, the Chopra committee was set up in 2013. This was basically set up to analyze how this Uttarakhand floods of 2013 were, what was the role of dams in the 2013 Uttarakhand floods. And this committee observed that river beds are raised from disposed muck at the dam construction sites. So as I mentioned, we saw here the infrastructure projects, the construction material from the infrastructure project are getting dumped at the riverfront. And they observed that even the construction of dams itself, dams in particular, also gets dumped in the riverfront. So what happens is the riverbed increases. The height of the riverbed is risen, and it's above the flood waters. So what happens is when flood comes in, the flood waters also, the level of flood waters also increase. This is a major concern when it comes to construction of dams in such areas. The concern is that when the dams the carrying capacity of the dams get affected, it would cause immense damage in the downstream areas. So the floods that are caused because of the reduced carrying capacity of the dams would lead to floods in the downstream areas. And once the floodwaters damage the barrage, as it has happened right now, the destructive capacity of the water flowing downstream also increases. Okay, because it is carrying with it immense amount of water than the actually accumulated water. So it will be also taking the water that has been already stored in the reservoirs or in the dams. So basically the destructive capacity is increasing multifold. And this particular committee submitted a report that suggested that 23 out of 24 projects that were proposed in these regions, in this Uttarakhand region, are potential or can cause potential damage. Despite these many things, in addition to this, even the Uttarakhand High Court actually questioned the usage of explosive in Rishiganga site when this power project was taken up. And even the Union Ministry after the 2000 floods acknowledged the adverse impact of dams. So despite the committee recommendations and observations made by the Union Ministry and High Courts and Supreme Courts, there has been no change or in the way of the approach taken by taken in developing the infrastructure around these sensitive regions. So all these points are just one aspect of disaster, that is man-made disaster. And there is another aspect to it, which is nature-based disaster that gets further enhanced by damage of dams. That is, for instance, the climate change itself is playing a major role. It actually is resulting in disintegration and receding of Himalayan glaciers, leading to more flow in the river Ganga. This increases the number and volume of glacial lakes as well. So what happens when there is flood situation? The water that get carried not only brings the water, but it also brings sediments, and this reduces the lifetime and the carrying capacity of the dam itself. Let it be dam or even reservoir. And moreover, these dams are getting constructed in sites that are more prone to earthquake. And for example, in Uttarakhand itself, these sites, the whole Uttarakhand state itself lies in broadly saying two zones, that is seismic zone 4 and seismic zone 5. And seismic zone 4 is nothing but severe intensity zones for earthquake, and seismic zone 5 is very severe intense. So when it is, we are aware that these are earthquake sensitive zones. Despite knowing this fact, the construction activity keeps going on and dams are getting built. So this has to be taken into consideration before planning any such project. And instead of building larger dams, we have to come up with better alternatives, considering the fact that the climate change is happening, as well as it would not be conducive for livelihood of the people living around here there and their lives. So students, this is all about dams and disaster article. You can definitely use these points in your mains GS3 paper, and even to an extent it can even come in your mains GS1 paper because of geography paper. Okay, so make sure you remember all these points and try to use these points in any type of questions related to disaster, because they may not be directly asking a question. You cannot always expect a direct question relating dams and disasters, but you can expect a question on floods as it was asked in 2 to 3 years back in mains paper. So the same manner there could be questions on this disasters. So use these points related that we have discussed here in your mains answer writing. So this is all about it. Till next class, happy learning. See you. Bye bye.